Welcome back to the ESL One Frankfurt seeding tournament. We have two new faces here on our desk. Of course, I'm talking about Blitz as well as Capitalist, guys. Great that you're joining us. We have another game coming up. Once more, we're going to have two games simultaneously happening here in the studio. We have Fnatic IG, but that's not the one we're going to show you. We're going to show you VG going up against the guys from EG. All the names so close to each other, it's getting really confusing. Either way, you can once more take a look at the seeding bracket to see how they got there. So those two games which are going on simultaneously, they are playing it out to then move on to the third place decider to see who comes in seed number 3. And we already have decided that Team Secret and Virtus.pro, one of them is going to take seed 1 and the other one is going to take seed 2. Guys, since we haven't had your opinion yet here on the desk, did everything go as you thought it would go, or were there any upsets and surprises for you?
For me personally, I feel like most of the predictions I had going into this were pretty good. I feel like VP, this was their chance, especially in best of ones. I felt like it was very favorable for them. So I thought that they would actually do quite well in the seeding. Turns out they are actually doing really well, perhaps a little bit better than most people would have expected. We'll see whether or not that turns into success in the main event, but I think best of ones do favor them. And I do feel like I wasn't overly impressed with their performance at DreamHack, and I thought they were going to have to step it up. But they also had a slew of problems at DreamHack. God was really sick. They had players that were just out of whack and stuff like that. So I think that VP will definitely bring a lot more strength to this tournament than maybe most of the public is expecting.
Yeah, for me personally, I'm not too surprised with the results so far. I thought that Secret was going to do really well. I think they've won their last 3 LANs, if I remember correctly, including the Summit, where that featured pretty much every major team, right? I thought that Cloud9 did about as expected. Like in some ways, for some people, it'll be a surprise, but they are using a stand-in, and I feel like that does affect things like your mentality, your play style. For example, like Pos played support, right? Like I just saw him play support where previously he was playing off lane, and so they're still trying to figure out what kind of role he had. I think Bone7's been drafting for them as well, so that's a double hit, right? Like you lose a pretty key role, and you lose your drafter as well. Like that's pretty much like the largest thing that you can be missing throughout the tournament. So I think things have gone pretty much as expected for me.
All right, what about you guys? Any surprises?
Not really, actually. I feel like the bracket has gone the way I sort of expected. Even with the IG-EG matchup, everyone knows EG is notoriously not bad, but questionable on the first day of tournaments.
Lower bracket kings.
Yeah, it just seems to be a team that really has to sort of, wake up, kind of. I don't know if it's a jet lag thing or... But generally speaking, I think everything went sort of according to plan, more or less.
I do agree with that. I think Alliance has been in a slump in their past offline performances, so you would expect them on the bottom, especially having such strong opponent teams. Like it's just being the top here at this tournament is very, very tough. And other than that, Cloud9 for sure. What William pointed out, when you lack your captain, it's very tough to still perform on a very high level. But I do expect them to perform a lot better at the ESL event when Bone7 is going to be back.
Okay, so looking at the match coming up for us now, VG against EG. The last time they met was actually at the Summit. And I believe there was the lower bracket final, and EG came out on top of that. Do you guys think that's any indicator to go by, or is still everything open for those two teams?
Personally, I would say that VG Gaming are feeling like the better team coming into this right now. I feel like Evil Geniuses haven't, like they, originally it's those big 3, right? EG, VG Gaming, and Secret, like all kind of contesting, going back and forth. But I really feel like EG has perhaps dropped a little bit, or maybe VG Gaming and Secret have both stepped up their games. Secret significantly, I would say. And EG is currently in that 3rd place slot for me. Maybe with this performance against VG Gaming in just a best of 1, they can change my mind on that, but I feel like that they are going into, one of the few times that they are, but they're going into this game a bit of the underdog.
For me personally, every single time I say that EG is going to win the tournament, that we've casted so far, and they lost, but you just can't ever count them out. I think that they have possibly one of the 2 best offlaners in the game, right? Like I think the 2 best offlaners in the world are playing in this game right now, in Universe and Ice. You've got possibly top 3 drafter in PPD. Like the cards line up really well for EG, and I feel like they've been missing something so far. Like maybe it's chemistry, or maybe they're still trying to figure out exactly how they want to play before TI. But I think something's missing. I think that ESL is a tournament that they will take seriously. I think that this is a match where I would favor them because I think they want to win. I think they're hungry. They're tired of getting second or third. And that's the ridiculous thing, right, is that they got second at the Summit, and you still felt that was a disappointment for them. Like, that's how you know that EG wants to be at least top 2, or you feel like they can always be top 2.
I think you got to question whether EG still has their place in the top 3 of teams. Sure enough, they're coming off a winner bracket win in the Dota Pit tournament. However, that is online, whereas we saw them crash and burn at MLD pretty hard. Granted, it was best of ones, but I think that speaks even more to the fact that I think Vici is the more likely candidate to win this particular game. How it will look when we go into Frankfurt and the best of 3 setup, I think it's a lot different. I think EG will finally come into their own, hopefully, just for the sake of the tournament and also EG, you know, a little biased maybe. For this particular game, I'm gonna favor VG Gaming, and I also think so far, from what we've seen, I think Virtus Pro is the new top 3 team you gotta be on the lookout for. They seem to have everything down to both in terms of their draft, their team play, and everything. I think it's harder to find weak spots with their roster right now than it is with the EG lineup.
Well, if we would have to find weak spots, Hani, looking at the performances we saw so far in this seeding tournament from VG, where are those weak spots?
It's a really tough question.
I know,
to
that's why I
answer.
asked it.
Generally, I would say, looking at this matchup, if you go back probably 3 months ago, you would expect this as a final matchup. Having Vici as well as EG in a final, potentially. Where Secret was the team that lacked a bit in performance, but now, after Secret's recent, I think it was 13 win streak, about there, after where EG took that 2-0 win against them in an online qualifier, they've been looking to be the strongest team to contest. But right now, going into this matchup, I would say to me it's a clear 50-50. I could not choose either or. I think especially having a BO1 on top of this, I could not choose a favorite.
Could you?
Yeah, VG Gaming.
But is it 50-50 for you too, or
no?
like
Because it's the best of 1 format, and because I think, contrary to what William believes, I think Vici actually wants to win the seeding match more. I think EG might be a bit like I think their attitude going into this is probably who would even want to pick us, you know. That's what I would expect them to think, and I wouldn't put it past them either. Like, I think it's very fine to think that, because I think every team here respects them a lot.
I mean, this is something we've discussed here in the panel already. Like, if a team like Secret doesn't come first, they could still feel pretty secure knowing that, well, most of the teams wouldn't necessarily pick us first anyway. Like, they probably are not overly eager to go up against us. How do you feel, how important is it for the majority of those teams here to actually be able to pick their opponents? And which teams are caring less about the whole thing?
I think the teams that are probably Vici, I think like the type of attitude they bring, they don't really seem to care who they play. It's just like, we'll play against anybody on any given Sunday, regardless of what the setup is. I think that Secret definitely doesn't care. Like, if you feel like you're the best team, you don't really care who you're going to play against, because you know that, you know, it has to run through you. It's like, anybody that wants to win, they have to go through us. So I feel like Secret, Vici probably don't care. I think Vici sometimes might have rough matchups. Like, we saw Fnatic do quite well against them in MLG, and it seems like that offbeat playstyle can sometimes cause them a little bit of troubles. So I feel like VP, even though I agree with Jacob in some sense, I think they are a top 3, top 4 team in the world, I think they would want to be able to pick. And who else is there? I guess that's about it. Like, I think EG would also prefer to have some sort of matchup set up.
All right. Well, Jacob said that EG is probably not coming out on top of this matchup, given that it's a best of 1. Do you guys also feel that the best of 1 format is playing into VG's hand here?
I believe so. I believe Vici Gaming have quite the advantage when it comes to this seeding matchup. If we were talking about a best of 3, I would be favoring Evil Geniuses a little bit more than I am right now. But I feel like best of 1, just Evil Geniuses being notorious, they drop the first day. They usually drop into the lower bracket early on. I think that best of 1s just don't really favor them. I think they're a team that has a slow build-up, and I don't think they're there yet.
I think going back to talking about seeding and who you want to pick, I think a lot of the time it comes down to who is more likely to cause an upset and annoy you. And I think the two teams to be really, really mindful about in this particular case would be Cloud9, like notoriously annoying to play against for any top team. Most recently for VG Gaming and IG, of course. And then I think both Malaysia and Virtus.pro have things that are hard to figure out, sort of, especially with Fnatic. It's hard to determine what they're going to do going into a game. And for that alone, I think they might be high on people's list of teams they don't want to pick. Whereas Alliance is pretty straightforward. I think a lot of teams would want to go with those guys just because they're sort of, you know their style, you know what to expect.
Yeah, they're a team that you've seen a lot of, and they're just very overall strong, right? While the other teams that you mentioned, I completely agree with you, are very stylized in their approach to the game and the draft in particular.
Yeah, well, talking about the draft, as you can see on your screen, Tusk finally made it through after some attempts and a lot of bans. Tusk is coming out on the side of Evil Geniuses. What do you think is going to surround this hero here for EG?
It doesn't really matter what you pick around it. Like, the hero's just really powerful.
It's just like,
Yeah, it gives you so many options. Like, you can pretty much lane it wherever. You can get aggressive with it if you want. It's one of the best counter-initiating heroes in the game, where you can, your teammate gets initiated on, and then you snowball them in with you. It's kind of like the Shadow Demon disruption in a lot of ways as a result. The Ice Shards early game are so powerful, and probably the most underrated part of him is the Sigil, right? Like, you can do Roshan really easily with the Sigil, and they are dire side as well. You can take team fights early on. Like, I think the hero overall just has a lot of strengths with him.
How many times have we seen Universe play Tusk?
He's played it recent against Secret in the Dota Pit tournament.
I was just wondering if I know he played it recently. I just wasn't sure how much background they have with Tusk as an offlane.
It's been successful, so
yeah.
It's been successful, but it's definitely not one of their most picked heroes. From the last 50 games or something. Tusk is not on the top of the list.
Yeah. So the question is, do they have the versatility enough to, like, what is going to be their preference going into a Tusk pit? Do they have the just completely wide open preference of being able to run him, support or offlane, or do they actually, as a team, have a preference where they want to be able to run this Tusk?
I would say they, for sure, have a preference on the offlane, just given the fact that they've played against Secret. It seemed to work for them as a pick on the offlane, but if you end up in a scenario where potentially you get contested and then you end up with a Tusk one-on-one against a ranged hero such as a Razor, just given an example here, then most likely you don't want to run a Tusk there. But preferable on that offlane, yes.
And don't ask me why, but it just doesn't feel right to me that to have PPD or Aoi play it.
Yeah.
It just doesn't seem as a hero either one of them are really comfortable playing. It's Aoi has a lot of strengths, PPD has other strengths and skill sets, and neither of them really seems to be revolving around a skill set that Tusk complements.
I would almost feel like Tusk isn't greedy enough for Aoi, and it's too greedy for PPD.
Yeah,
like, he's such a self-sacrificial player.
It's hitting that sweet spot right between them.
I actually completely feel you on that one. EG picking up the Dazzle now, going up against the Razor and Clockwork. Pretty good saving hero. The armor increase is going to be nice versus Razor as well.
I have to say, though, in that particular combination where you have a follow-up heal onto the snowball, it could be something that a support duo can be.
It's like a Shadow Demon Dazzle, right?
Yeah, pretty much. So
looking it up right now, by the way. Tusk Universe is he played it 2 times, and they won 2 times with him, and that's within the last 25 games.
Nice. I didn't know they actually played it. I saw the recent game where they played it against, I think you said Secret, but I didn't know that they played it another time before that.
So there's looking at the draft phase. There's still a ton of supports left. We actually haven't seen much Winter Wyvern, although I expected that to be picked a lot more than it has been. Do you think that's because this is after all a seeding day that doesn't necessarily mean anything to some of the teams? And going into the weekend, you'd rather conceal the fact that you're playing this to at times semi-broken support hero? I'd go as far as saying.
I think that's a really good point, right? That in the fact that just because nobody's going to hide strats, I would say, for ESL, but hiding a certain hero pick or a strat for a seeding match where, as you said, it's not going to take you out of the game entirely, I think that makes a lot of sense.
I think it changes for certain teams. Like, for example, I don't think C9 had any plans on picking the Terrorblade, but I saw RTZ go over to Eternal Envy before the game, and he was kind of like poking him. He was like, "When are you going to pick Terrorblade?" And then Eternal Envy was like, "Oh, we can play Terrorblade," and he knows it's not a good hero. It's like, but they decided to pick it anyways. And I think for certain teams, the seeding tournament doesn't matter, especially for a team like C9 where they don't have Bone 7 yet. But I think for most of the teams here, they care at least for a practice sense, right? Like, you still want to... This is probably your best time to be able to practice against teams. Like, this is kind of your scrim.
But correct me if I'm wrong, didn't they play a Terrorblade when they were in China 2 weeks ago?
Did they? I don't... It's not a game-winning hero, though. It's just...
It's really even RTZ, like, the moment they actually picked up the Terrorblade, he walked away and was like, Cloud9 lost. He was just happy he goaded them into it, I think. Oh, the Wisp. VG Gaming, I mean, their favorite hero right now in 6.84.
Yeah, they're 7-2 right now with him. Played him in 9 games within the last 50 games, so they should be pretty happy with that pickup.
It must be annoying to having to commit to a Sand ban in the current meta just because the opposing team has FY on their roster.
Yeah.
Because you like against most teams, you probably would have preferred banning on the Wisp. So.
What do you think about the combination here, the Wisp and being run with Razor, or are you looking to actually pick up a more dedicated Wisp hero for the mid? Because most of the time, like, Razor fulfills a very specific role, I would say, that is sort of a mid-game dominator. I don't think you want to get too greedy and pick up.
I think they're adding in another one. I think Super might play that Razor on the middle lane even. I wouldn't put it past them, and just getting something more, you know, there's really not much that Razor and Wisp complement each other on other than survivability.
I would say the obvious choice of laning here is that Razor goes short lane, where you have a Link on the Razor, and that kind of helps him towards running down the lane. He's a very strong short laner because of the Link, and then you have a Wisp +1 that goes towards mid lane as a combo. They played it with Tiny before, so I wouldn't be too surprised seeing a Tiny, but Tiny as well was used by EG to counter the attack animation on Tiny. When you have the Sigil up, Tiny actually does not have any, like, he's not going to be able to hit during
and Sigil is surprisingly difficult to actually deal with, you know. A lot of the time people are in the mindset, okay, let's just attack the Sigil and kill it. But that's not an easy task to do, just because of how it hinders your attack speed and it flies around, and it's just one of the biggest grievances for anyone to play against. It's really, really annoying.
Plus, often you're not even allowed to do it. Like, if you choose to focus a Sigil, you might be in a crucial situation where if you chose to go for the Sigil over killing a hero, that you end up dying.
Yeah, either you're already dead or the enemy is already gone. You know, you just never have the time required to actually attack it.
Since the beginning of the hero picks, I was wondering what's the interaction between Snowball and the passive of Razor. Whether or not, when do you get purged if you target the Razor with the Snowball?
I think it's when you start it.
When you get purged?
But shouldn't that take away the move speed from the ball?
I don't think so.
Because
your initial speed will probably be lowered.
Because I see the Razor as the follow-up pick onto a Tusk, which...
So it's definitely an offlane Tusk now. Enigma pickup.
Yeah. I actually want to go back to the Storm Spirit pickup, though. Blitz, like, whether it's Razor mid or it's a dual lane with something mid, Storm Spirit isn't particularly adept at those matchups, right?
I think Storm Spirit gets crushed by both.
Yep.
I think even a good Storm, especially on the Dire side, like, if you were on Radiant side, you could just default to the jungle and stack the 2 camps for yourself. Like, I think Hani, too, would know this, right, as a mid. If you're on the Radiant side, like, that's your fallback. It's like, everything's gone bad for you mid. Just go to the jungle. He's one of the fastest jungle heroes. You get 2 into the Remnant, and you can farm really quickly, like, almost as fast as you would mid. But the problem is, A, you have an Enigma, B, you're on Dire side. And so the jungle is going to get really crowded because AUI is the type of player that you want to devote a lot of farm to. And B, you're on the Dire side, and so it's harder for the Storm to just completely leave the lane, because I think it just opens up too much to the mid lane for VG Gaming. And I do kind of like that EG is picking heroes that they're kind of known for, right? Like, we know that Enigma is an AUI hero. Like, it has been for such a long time. Storm Spirit has been a Sumail hero. Like, if there's a player that's really linked with that hero nowadays, it is Sumail. And so it's not the best in this patch so far, but I'm glad that they still went to it. It's not great in the laning phase, but I think in the mid game especially, he's going to be super comfortable playing it, and I think that's why they picked it here.
So I was actually leading into this then. Does this mean Storm Spirit is our safe laner, and they pick up something else for mid? Bristleback being the ban away from EG against VG Gaming with the Wiz combination, but Storm Spirit safe lane with Sumail, or do we actually still keeping him mid?
I mean, I can't even make up my mind on what is a good pick right now for... I'm almost leaning towards a Dragon Knight.
On which side?
On the EG side of things, because it gives them a lot of pushability. He's a tanky hero. Later on in the game in the Black Hole, it sort of complements each other.
The problem is if you choose to get a Dragon Knight, that Razor can just go towards mid lane and then you have a Wisp +1 on the safe lane. So it doesn't really help your lanes. Like Dragon Knight is the default loss against the Razor, I would say.
No, I wouldn't put the Dragon Knight mid, I'd still put the Storm mid.
Oh, okay. I think though, if you take the Dragon Knight as your one position, it's kind of bad because you're soaking up you're dividing a lot of experience, and I think Dragon Knight really needs the 6 as fast as possible. And the reason for this is because you can power down towers before the enemy team gets any levels and can respond. Like once you hit level 6 at around 4 or 5 minutes, then it becomes nighttime, it becomes a lot harder to plan things out. I feel like they'll also miss a lot of damage. Like,
but it's just looking at what's available. I feel like I have a hard time finding something that is just that perfect answer against the VG Gaming lineup.
I'm excited about that last pick hero. Alchemist as the carry with the Wisp here.
What do you think of a Lifestealer? Especially now that the Alchemist was picked up. We have the Storm Bomb.
I mean, you're going into a Razor, though.
Okay, Lancer's the... I was fearing that would be the pick just because it's a little boring.
Yeah.
Well, what's your prediction then, since the draft is done? So we once more are heading into prediction time.
I'm gonna stick with my VG Gaming prediction just because I like that Alka pickup, and I feel like they have a sort of a well-rounded lineup. That being said, if you look at meta picks alone, EG obviously have the better lineup. They have a lot of good stuff wrapped in together, and with that Phantom Lancer pickup, they have an amazing lane in the Shadow Priest Phantom Lancer, obviously. But I do think Storm Spirit is gonna struggle.
I kind of believe that if EG can manage somehow to contest the Alchemist, it's going to be a bit difficult. Obviously, it's still hard to accomplish, but I believe we've seen Universe also play Enigma before, so they could switch it somehow around, whereas you just contest with a Phantom Lancer as a tri-lane against an Alchemist, which would trouble the lane of VG a lot. Because if you actually leave an Alchemist carry alone, and he just farms up, that hero is... I feel like he's one of the most underrated carries right now. Most teams don't expect him to be that strong.
And when you then have one of the best farmers in the world on him, it just adds up to that snowball effect.
He can double the net worth at like 10 minutes.
Yeah. The flash farm potential on that hero.
So your vote goes for VG Gaming then?
Like I said, it depends on if EG contests, I would go with EG, but if they don't and just run normal lanes, regular lanes, I would give the advantage to VG. I'm very excited for the Alchemist pick.
I don't even want to call this one actually. It's too close to call for me. I don't have enough confidence in either.
Do you two feel the same way?
No, I'm down to say VG Gaming. I mean, I felt like VG Gaming were going to win this best of one in the first place, but also combining the fact that we were all looking at what is EG drafts as their fifth, right? We're trying to solve that puzzle. We're not trying to deal with what VG Gaming had. And that kind of, for me, says that VG Gaming had such an open-ended draft, they could have picked whatever they wanted to go with that Wisp, essentially. I feel like that's a big draft advantage.
I'm not sure if they're serious right now, but apparently Ice, they were talking early game and they said that they didn't have their headsets on, but I don't know if it's just them trolling because EG seems pretty lighthearted with everything. But I think EG probably, I don't know. They have a Storm, and so I feel biased. Off of that alone.
I would like to correct myself. I see it's a super Alchemist, so it's going to be most likely Alchemist middle, and then you just run that Racer Wisp combination, potentially? Or is it an Alchemist Wisp combination?
Yeah, I think they might still do the Wisp Alchemist.
It just seems a bit odd in the mid lane to me.
Well, he's going to get every last hit. There's nothing the Storm can do to really prevent him from just being full HP and farming away, right?
Storm versus Alk? No, I think Storm destroys Alk.
No, but that's why I'm saying if Wisp is there's nothing the Storm can actually do.
No, he can do fine because the IO can't actually harass him very much.
Yeah, he can.
It's
he
a
can't
5
hit him.
No, I'm not saying Storm can't stand in the lane. I'm saying he can't really touch the Alchemist too much. I don't feel like by the time that Storm is out of mana, Alchemist will still be healed up.
And presumably because you have a Razor facing up against a Tusk, it's possible that your line can also rotate out, right?
Yeah.
It looks like we're having another network issue here.
All right, I'll leave it to you guys. I'll just, peace
so
out
kind
and
of
be
you.
like, this is
That's
a
so kind of you.
50-50. Like, have fun.
All right, that's easy game for you. Then, well, once more, I want to remind everyone out there watching to join us in ESL One in Frankfurt. We're going to be in the arena there, and you can still purchase tickets. All you have to do is head over to ESL1.com, and there you can still purchase the weekend ticket as well as the single-day tickets. To join us for all the actions, we have 8 of best teams in the whole wide world playing it out. Right now, we're playing for the seeding matches, Secret, as well as the guys from... I already forgot it. No, I didn't. Yes, I did.
It's Fnatic
Secret
versus
is
Cloud9.
No, Secret is meeting who in the finals?
Virtus.pro.
Virtus.pro, right.
Yeah.
That was it. Secret and Virtus.pro already in the finals, and we're still waiting to see who's playing it out for the third place decider. And now it looks like this game is finally on the way to go, so guys, take it away.
All right. Well, okay. Maybe not. But we do have VG Gaming facing up against Evil Geniuses in this best of one for the seeding matches of ESL One Frankfurt. You can see right now already VG Gaming centering up on getting that precious bounty rune. All the more precious because they do have the Alchemist, which obviously is a huge buff. Meanwhile, Evil Geniuses going to head down to the bottom bounty rune. Should be a 50-50 split up between the two.
Yeah, and obviously it does help the bounty or the Alchemist a little bit more.
Yep.
But I think it's okay for the Storm. Like the bounty rune will help the Alch a lot, but it helps the Storm just as much in the sense that with the Storm, you just kind of want to trade 1-for-1 farm, and especially if he's against a hero like Alchemist, and I think he'll be fine. If he's against the Alch and the IO, things get a little bit tricky, but Storm should still have a pretty good time if he just creep pulls, and he should be okay.
By the way, guys, ignore the ticking clock for whatever reason. I'm really bugged out. But the game is paused. It's not ticking down or anything. For some reason, I didn't have a pause screen. And yeah, now we could see everyone getting back into the game. What is this? Is this Reborn troubles? Is this what's happening?
I'm like the last person
Reborn
you should ask
beta
about PC stuff.
shows up and everybody wants to get on and download it. I don't know.
Right,
Anyway, so talking about draft-wise, you specifically mentioned, okay, Alchemist and Wisp, they can't really touch the Storm because you say the Wisp can't really harass the Storm Spirit back enough. You also, I mentioned the rotating factor of the Lion as being a possible factor that could be played into the middle lane because there is, EG, oh god, Fear is actually trying to snag that bounty rune, but unfortunately for him, the Doppelganger level 1 was not good enough. Super picks it up anyway and gets that coveted increase of gold, which means he already has his bottle. Look at him. He picked up the just the 2 branches, and with the bounty rune, he instantly gets that first bottle.
Yeah, and it looks like they're actually not going for what we originally thought. Like they're going to put the Clockwork against the Tuskar, and I think that's the lane the Clockwork is going to prosper in. I think Clockwork against most melee heroes should do fine, but that's a matchup that I really want to see. Like that's one of the few times I'm going to see Ice against Universe in a battle for supremacy.
Yeah, and a very interesting one at that because it's very much skill-based, right? Potentially, like the cogs being spanned out by Ice can play a big factor in him being able to basically stop Universe from having any mana to spam out Snowball or Ice Shards.
Oh boy.
Yeah. But this also means that they have a Razor with an aggressive tri-lane behind him facing up against a Phantom Lancer who can do better maybe than some other melee carries, but he's still a melee carry that is going to be forced away constantly from being able to get CS. So this is essentially, potentially, a victory for their bottom lane as well as a victory for their top lane on the side of VG Gaming, but it does come at the cost that Super is going to have a hard time in middle against the Storm Spirit.
I think a Storm Spirit should be doing really well against the Alchemist, and you're seeing it right now. Like the Alch still doesn't have a CS. The Storm can just zone him out with the Remnant. The problem, I guess, right now is that, like you said, Vici in the short lane especially will have the advantage. Like PPD plus a Phantom Lancer, like the Phantom Lancer plus Shadow Priest can't really do anything, or the Dazzle, I guess, is in Dota 2, can't really do anything to contest either of the heroes up there. Like the Wisp is going to struggle to get levels unless he just decides to pull. So Fenrir probably has to rotate around the map to kind of help out that mid lane is what I'd like to see. AUI and the jungle should be untouched because it's a Lion and a Wisp ganking him. Like, he should be okay against that. And so for me personally, it's the burden of victory is on Vici. Like, they have to really do a lot in this short lane, in EG's short lane. Like, they actually have to go get maybe at least 1 kill to punish Enigma just free farming because the Enigma will just out farm everybody. So I think you have to punish the short lane a lot more than you're used to, and I think that the line has to rotate at least once or twice to help out super mid.
All right, we're gonna have a restart here. You see already, this middle lane, poor Super is gonna be depending pretty heavily on that Bottle Crow as he's already burned through half of his HP and quickly going to be using up that bottle. Meanwhile, though, in the top lane, Hao is aggressively pushing into Fear, trying to make sure that he can't get much CS via static link, spamming him. Super. Jesus, every single time I look over him, he's dropping lower and lower. You weren't kidding about the Storm Spirit destroying Alchemist in a 1v1.
Yeah, and it's more of the fact that the Storm can kind of bully the Alch out. Like, if you notice what Sumail does is, typically what you'll do with the Storm in a matchup that's disadvantaged is you'll use your Overload to CS, but he's almost just entirely using it to harass.
Oh, he's going to get this one. Bottle. Oh, 16 HP. Barely. Super manages to bottle straight ahead of that one. Meanwhile, top lane, they are going to Fear, but of course he has Doppelganger, so not much fear of dying there. But just, again, push back by Vici Gaming, make sure he's not getting any CS whatsoever. Alchemist, meanwhile, is going to have to go all the way back to base instead of getting some sort of bottle crow. So an unfortunate loss of experience for him in that middle lane.
That's so significant, too, as a mid laner. You're going all the way back. You're probably going to sell or have a TP bot from somebody else. Like, yeah, it's Fenrir just buys him the TP, so it weakens that lane up a little bit, and it just gives Sumail so much space. And at the same time, the Enigma just continues to free farm in the jungle. So it's just like a dual principle. You're losing the mid lane really hard, and at the same time, you're not doing enough at top to punish the jungle. Like, that's what you have to do if you want to punish a jungle hero, is you want to take advantage of the lanes. But
right.
Vici, their bottom lane is doing okay, but it's still in favor of Tusk by a little bit. And if you're EG, you're incredibly happy with how the lanes are going right now.
Mm-hmm. So you know me, I like to spam a lot of clockwork, and my preferred build is usually 0, 1, 2 in the first 3 levels. The extra level in Rocket Flare really helping you get CS. But in a 1v1 matchup, particularly another melee hero, I kind of feel like I would see opportunities to be able to utilize Battery Assault and would probably go for a 2-1 build once I've burned away the Tusk's mana. We see our Clockwork, Ice not going for this build. In fact, holding back on his skill points for now, just to wait to see that opportunity. But why do you think he went for Rocket Flare at level 2, as opposed to potentially more kill power by having Battery Assault level 2 by level 3?
I don't think you're going to be able to kill a Tusk unless he really outplays him, because he's got the Snowball. He can just kind of sit inside during the duration, and I think it is more reliable to get farm out of the Power Cogs and the Rocket Flare.
Yeah,
because you
I
can
meant more the fact that he's burning away all his mana, though.
Yeah.
There's no Snowball factor that Tusk can fall back on at this point.
I guess, but imagine if Ice goes to gank. Like, he does grab 2 levels now, so it's okay, but
yeah,
if you're just trying to farm, like, the Rocket Flare is a lot more reliable, and the single level of the Battery Assault isn't going to change anything, whereas the 2 levels of the Battery Assault might. The only downside I feel like for Clockwork this game is it's going to be so hard for him to initiate on anybody. Like, there's a Storm in the game, there's a Phantom Lancer, like, there's so many ways for him to escape right now.
Yeah, this is not going to be one of those easy pick-off games, that's for sure. Obviously, his biggest targets are going to be probably those supports who don't really have an escape mechanism, but the 3 cores all have something to be able to get away. FY now going to make a rotation away from that top lane, probably because Super was suffering so badly in this middle lane. He feels like it's necessary now for him to be able to help out this middle lane, and it could just come at the perfect opportunity. You see the Invis rune already being popped here, but Sumail is healing up through his bottle and is indeed bottle crowing. So Super's going to have to bring Sumail a lot lower if they wanted some sort of surprise.
Super has to get out. About now. He's actually just going to die right now.
Yep, level 6 picked up. No, the heal comes in from FY. Good enough. They throw out the concoction. Does hit Sumail. You can't disjoint that one, but they keep Super alive at the very least. But Sumail picking up his level 6 ahead of Super by a whole entire level. Goes to showcase just how dominant that EG mid has been so far.
Yeah, but if you take a look at the net worth, because of the bounty rune, Super is actually still ahead. That's so absurd. That Sumail has pretty much dominated this lane, and Super's still ahead by about 100 net worth. But if you're a Stormstrayer, this is kind of what you want. Like, he's pretty much free farming. You're okay if the other mid laner farms. You expect that. And this top lane, though, the Phantom Lancer is actually doing quite well as the Razor is getting behind.
He's got that black hole ready to go, but not going to be able to utilize it just yet, perhaps just to catch out Fenrir. In fact, that is exactly what happens. FY comes in with a tether, trying to keep Fenrir alive, but no can do. How now? Moving forward, trying to go for AUI, but he's facing up against 3 heroes. The lance goes out, a couple of right clicks, but he gets bursted down by that Shadow Wave from PPD. Very nicely placed, and they pick up 2 kills in that top lane. Meanwhile, bottom, we actually have the Tusk, who was dove by our Clockwork, managed to pick up the kill, but died in return.
Yeah, and that's a little bit of a surprise, but that's the Ice special. Like, he manages to get kills in lanes that you typically wouldn't see, but Sumail, TP's coming in mid. I think the Tusk is just coming in to potentially go for a gank here, and yeah, they're going to go for it right now. Super doesn't have his ultimate just yet. Nobody's behind him.
Unfortunately, FY He was sitting there on the side, but he had no bottle charges, so unable to really help out Super. Good gank there from Universe, very well timed, and again, keeping that Alchemist down as much as possible. I mean, at this point, we usually think of the current Alchemist to be very farm-oriented, as opposed to maybe previous renditions that was very aggressive with the Unstable Concoction. At this point, keeping him down, yeah, he may still be able to get net worth, but it just seems like his viability as a carry is just not going to come up anytime soon.
The thing about the Alchemist, too, is that the Storm wants to be 1-for-1 in terms of farm, but the Alchemist doesn't.
Yeah.
Like, the entire point of the hero is to get as far ahead as you possibly can. So I think him going 1-for-1 is a really negative thing for the hero. But EG right now are pretty much rolling the classic AUI rotation. He hits level 6. He typically ganks mid for that, and I think that's why Super was playing so far back. But he, in fact, goes for the top lane, goes for the Lion, and how overcommitting there, and they're able to get a lot of control as a result. And that top lane, I mean, I thought the Razor was going to be able to completely zone up the Phantom Lancer, but Fear's doing just fine up here. And so top 3 net worth all belonging to EG so far.
Yeah, bad start. Super actually dropping a bit low here in this middle lane, but he is about to pick up his level 6, so he will be finally a bit more independent as a carry hero and won't need that constant babysitting perhaps, or bottle crowing, as that regen will come in handy. But is it just a bit too late? Feels like Evil Geniuses have secured themselves quite the lead in these first 7 minutes, particularly in the hands of AUI and all that free farming. At this point, he is going to be going for an early mech. Do you go straight BKB after that, or do you think there is some potential opportunities to be had with the early Blink Dagger?
I think going for the early Blink would be a mistake. There's just too much that can cancel his black hole.
Right.
And I think going all in like that is a really bad idea. And Sumail is zipping around, but he loses the regen actually, and that's his entire mana pool with a rune coming up, but it can't be a regen, and so Sumail with a little bit of a misplay there.
Ice, thinking about going for PPD, but he knows they have both the Shadow Wave and the Shallow Grave available, so not really worth trying to commit to that one. It's especially hard as a Clockwork laning up against a Phantom Lancer because there's so many opportunities. Any kind of jumping hero is going to have an advantage against a Clockwork. You know, you look at your Phantom Assassins, like they're able to just jump inside the cogs to help out their support when they're gone on. Well, Phantom Lancer has both Doppelganger as well as his actual Lance that is going to be able to spawn extra units to tank up that battery assault, which, you know, plays a large factor, especially with a very defensive hero like Dazzle. If Dazzle ever gets caught out, there's still multiple opportunities for him to be able to save his ally.
Yeah, and I'm a little bit worried right now for Vici Gaming as EG, they haven't really been pressured too much, and they do have a really mobile lineup, like you said. Like, they've got the Phantom Lancer, they've got the Storm Spirit. They have to, Vici have to be a little bit worried right now because their only lockdown is that Clockwork Hook, and it's the Lion, who hasn't really had too much farm. He hasn't been able to pull or anything like that. He's actually smoked up in this bottom lane, but Universe is well on his way back to the tower, and so this is going to be a huge time commitment lost by him. And I think this is just EG in control, but at the same time, like, Vici Gaming still have the IO.
Oh, Super pulled back here. They're going to try and make a turnaround. Sumail is very low on mana. In fact, they're going to be able to jump him. Sumail has one last jump to go. Can he actually get away from Super, though? The extra movement's be too much, and Sumail makes a critical mistake thinking he can actually take on Super. But, of course, that whiz coming in from behind. Once again, FY saves Super's life.
Yeah, and a really good play right now from Vici Gaming, baiting out Super. You just can't kill an Alchemist with his ultimate up and with that many wand charges, and I think Sumail thought that he'd be able to just kind of poke and feel, and if the IO doesn't come in immediately, he can just straight up kill Super.
Right.
But because he is there, the turnaround potential is high, and I think that kind of speaks to the type of player Sumail is too. He goes in first and then asks questions later. Like, he lets his individual skill kind of work things out for him. Like, he'll go in and then he'll kind of figure out as he's going in, okay, this is what's going to happen right now, but sometimes it can lead to results like that where he does get outplayed a little bit.
And unfortunately, looks like we have another pause on our hands as more net worth issues. Let's take a look at the net worth, though. We do have Evil Geniuses taking about a 2K lead and about 4,000 experience. Nothing too major that can't be overcome, but it is a serious lead for EG. You are talking about an Alchemist, though, who can always make that net worth come back. It feels like Vici Gaming are going to have to play pretty heavily for late game, but how do you really see that one playing out against a Phantom Lancer, Enigma, Storm Spirit? Those heroes are plenty profitable in the late game.
I think that Vici had to do a little bit more in the laning phase. Like, I'm talking like the game is over, but it clearly isn't. Because EG can always make mistakes, and at this bottom lane, Hao right now is being pressured, but it is a Razor, and it's incredibly hard for the Storm to be able to pressure that.
Right.
And Universe is at this bottom lane as well, but I don't think they'll dive that. And actually, they potentially might go for this after killing the creep wave. Like, I think they're just going to super dive for it, and let's just check who has TP. Super has one, FY has one.
All right, so they do have the Wisp and Alchemist at the very least. Ice does have a TP, but he isn't much use as he already tried to go on Fierce. So they do block Hao out. They're bringing pretty low. He's already down to about 400 HP. The nukes aren't quite enough just yet. Universe comes in with the Rawless Punch, able to take him out just as the TP from the Clockwork is about to come in. Unfortunately, though, another network issue. We are going to have him almost enough mana to be able to pop Cogs, but it isn't quite enough. Again, unfortunately, because he tried to go on Fear at the top lane, this means he can't really respond at the bottom lane.
Yeah, and I'm really surprised that that happened because we were in the time, we had time to count out TPs, and we knew that was going to happen too because that's the typical play. You push out the lane, you force Hao into a sandwich where the Tusk and the Stormsphere can kind of just go on top of you, and Sumail smartly doesn't use a single levels pull. He just nukes him down, and I think that was a bit of a misplay by Vici Gaming. They might be a little bit tilted by things such as the disconnects and stuff like that, and maybe they just forgot about it or Hao forgot to mention it. But that should have been a call I feel that he should have made for his team to come down there. So they don't respond. It could either be the call wasn't made for them to come down or he simply just forgot. It's hard to say whose fault that was, but it definitely was a little bit of a misplay by Vici Gaming.
Yeah. At the same time, Super is farming up his Ancient stack. In fact, almost cleared through the whole entire thing. Now, that's one advantage that we didn't point out during this whole entire laning phase, is that Super does always have stacks to fall back on, and obviously an Alchemist being one of the more proficient and gets a lot of value out of those stacks through his Grievel's Greed. Is it going to be enough for him to be able to farm it? Like, what sort of items are you pick up at this point in time when you're already down so heavily as an Alchemist on your team, and the rest of your allies don't really seem to have much killing potential? I mean, the Clockwork pickup obviously can't do anything against the cores. Feels like the Razor, because they ran that aggro tri-lane, isn't going to have enough to be, a big mid-game dominant hero to keep EG back. Does your Alchemist try and build heavily into mid-game items so he can join you for these team fights?
I think so, because you have to get map control as fast as you can, and the only way to do it against a mobile lineup is to bring the fight to them. Like, you have to, the Alchemist has to get a mechanism, and I think they just kind of have to snowball as hard as they can right now.
Right.
And they do have the lineup to do it. Like, Razor is one of the best carries at being able to 5-man early on. You've got the Io who can beef up the Alchemist and kind of shore up his shortcomings or whatever farm that he's lacking. The issue right now for me, though, is that I do think that Fender has to have a Blink Dagger around at least the 20-minute mark for him to be able to actually catch somebody, because that's right now the major concern right now for Vici Gaming, is that they don't really have the best potential to catch. And if you're against two mobile cores playing the 1 and the 2 position, you have to have something to be able to initiate on either of them. And if you just want to get into a long stalled out fight, the mobile heroes will always win.
Right. So hindsight obviously being 2020, but do you think that Vici Gaming, that their laning phase decisions were correct? The idea to put the Alchemist in the first couple minutes solo mid with a minimal amount of help from FY, running an aggro tri-lane to try and shut down the Phantom Lancer, and then pairing the Clockwork up against the Tusk.
I think putting the Alch mid against the Storm, the idea was that the Alch would just trade out farm, and he has the bounty rune, so he should be okay.
Yeah.
But they have to realize that Sumail's just going to play aggressively on him, spam the overload. Alch has one of the worst base armors, right? Like, he's only got 3. There's very little chance for him to be able to counter pressure, and I think that top lane had to go better. Like, if you were going to aggressive tri-lane, I think the plan was to try to pressure out the Phantom Lancer and make the Enigma rotate a lot, or at least pressure EG into making mistakes. But EG kind of just played back. They played patient. Fear just kind of lanced the farm, waited for the creep wave to come back to him. PPD just kept pulling the lane. And so I think the laning phase definitely went the way of EG. Like, I think Jacob's idea originally, putting the Razor against the Tuskar, like, what is a Tuskar going to do against the Razor, right?
Yeah.
I think that would have been probably the cleaner decision. But obviously, I think Vici's idea was correct. I think the execution was just a little bit off.
Well, as a Storm Spirit player, what about the other play, which would have been putting Razor against this Storm Spirit and then just running a defensive tri-lane where you can easily shut out the Tusk with, 2 supports. The Wisp can move around, get bottle, where have you. I mean, you don't usually want to run a Wisp in a tri-lane. You much prefer to run him in dual lanes, just more favorable. You get a lot more of the laning phase typically because of that, but that would have at least assured that 2 of your lanes would have been won, right? You shut out the Tusk, pretty normal, and then you have that Storm Spirit versus Razor matchup, which is very good for the Razor, right?
I think they mainly did it because they knew that they were going to struggle to do anything in the short lane. Like, how do you kill a Phantom Lancer who's just had free farm for 10 minutes, right?
Yeah, true.
Especially with the type of lineup that you had. So I think Vichi's idea was use the Razor, get aggressive. They can't really fight our aggressive tri-lane if we have the Razor up there. But they just weren't able to get any kills because their initiation potential isn't very high, and the burst damage just isn't there, especially against a hero like Dazzle. So it's just one of those things that you want to test out to see how it works, and it just doesn't go your way.
Yep. All right, guys. Well, we do see what else. Orchid being picked up here from our Storm Spirit with the double robe at Magi's instead of, say, a Bloodstone build. I mean, it's quite favorable versus the Alchemist in particular, taking out the Wisp and the Lion pretty quickly. I mean, that's his biggest fear, right, is that the Lion is able to catch him out.
Yeah, that's pretty much the only fear that he has right now, and I think Vici... I mean, I'm giving a lot of praise to EG, and it's easy to do, right, because they're winning right now. But from the laning phase, like, people watching, I have zero bias towards EG. I really like Vici Gaming as a team as well, and I'm trying to make things okay in my brain for them. But for me, this kind of just feels like a simple outdraft. Like, it just felt like EG has a little bit more mobility. Their laning phase went a lot better, and their laning phase was less important than Vici's. Like, Vici had to have a really important laning phase, and
Sure.
Chuan is just screaming.
Chuan is going ham right now. They're actually playing right in front of us. We got Cloud9 versus
He is so
Fnatic
animated.
playing us, and he really is.
When VP and Vici Gaming were playing, he was screaming, like at nobody in particular. Like, he was just shouting at the top of his lungs. He was like, "FY God, FY God."
Oh man, I love the fact that Chuan just seems to be not only so animated but so friendly. Obviously, he was talking with us a little bit. We were asking him questions about what they called the various players and what they thought about the draft, and I think I particularly like the fact that he wanted VP to win, mainly because he liked their draft. Not cheering for his, Chinese brothers in IG, but actually cheering for what he felt was the better draft.
Yeah, and I think that's just a Dota purist at heart. And the game has resumed, and so FY now in this mid lane just trying to soak up XP and trying to get that critical level 6 on that IO. And it's a pretty big deal right now because it is pretty much key to being able to get aggressive on the map. If you don't have any gap closers, you need the IO, and I wouldn't be surprised if Vici Gaming start to form up a little bit as the Alchemist grabs his mech pretty soon. Like, he's only 400 gold away from it now.
Yeah. With a Razor, you don't have too much catching mechanisms against EG. You've got a Razor, you've got a mech pickup from Super. Do you just try and 5-man snowball like in 5-6 minutes from now to try and upset what is the current trend of the game?
Yeah, I think that you kind of have to hyper Deathball right now, but AUI rotated to this top lane is going to use his Eidolons to take this down, and this is going to open up even more of the map right now. And Vici Gaming might feel like their timing arrives a little bit later as a result of this. Like, they might just wait for 1 or 2 more items. The Lion can still get a blink at some point. No, he's like 300 gold. And he's actually going to get gone on, but Sumail doesn't have the mana for this quite yet, and Super is rotating over. Fenrir doesn't have any more mana, and this should just be a wash.
Yeah, it's fine for Sumail. He picked up the banner rune. I'm sure he's happy with what he got out of that. And in the meantime, Ice, well, he's got an impressive level 9, but what items do you really go when you can't catch any heroes? It looks like he's going to be picking up an urn, but again, just can't really do anything against the Phantom Lancer, and it shows with the way that Fear is aggressively pushing forward into that tier 2, now backing up to farm his jungle.
Yeah, his problem right now is that typically what you'll see is Ice will get level 6, he'll try to gank the mid lane, but you're ganking for Super, who's only got 3 levels of the stun, and it's not the ideal setup for you, right? Especially if EG has a high ground ward. They don't, but maybe they could have gone for this, but it would have been really high risk, high reward in some ways. Like, killing Sumail probably doesn't even affect EG too much. It's more Fear being able to free farm and AUI still being uncontested so far. Like, the amount of farm right now that AUI has is actually absurd.
Yeah, AUI is even going to take a stab at farming up these Ancients. Clockwork Rocket does spot him out, and you could see what Vici Gaming are up to here. They're going to go for a 4-man smoke behind their tier 1 tower. As we both kind of said, this is a time where Vici Gaming need to upset what is the current trajectory of this game. Now, SCII is looking pretty hard at AUI, but look at the two members of Evil Genius behind him. They do have two different saving mechanisms. Can they actually keep AUI alive? The Finger of Death almost bopping him. Snowball keeps him alive, actually. Still got the black hole ready to go. Shallow Grave almost taking him out, and he will throw the black hole now. It's the Shadow Wave keeps him alive ahead of that one. Oh my god, they're actually not going to be able to kill him. Finally, they take him out. Super turns, take out another support. His House now join the battlefield to go up against PPD. They'll take him out while Fear jumps himself away. Hal comes in with the triple kill, managing to win that fight ever so barely against Evil Geniuses, as that just as easily could have gone the other way. FY playing a very precarious game against Fear like that, but won't be gone on. Meanwhile, Sumail still looking for his opportunity, but is going to be forced back without any... Oh! That unstable concoction almost catching him out before the TP, but 5-7 now, and Vici Gaming, I mean, it wasn't the greatest fight in the world, but they did win it.
Yeah, and they did force out the black hole, which is probably more important right now. If you're a team that relies on snowballing like this, playing around the cooldowns is really important. And that smoke was a really good idea. I don't think they expected everybody to be there, but that was even better for them than they expected, because Vici Gaming getting away with a few kills there, they're going to be really satisfied. And EG potentially could have fought if the Storm had full mana, but he doesn't. And they just kind of hit a really clean timing. And
Ice, he's going to go again. He's going to try and snap. Owie, he does push back PPD. They're going to try and burst AUI as soon as possible. There goes that Shallow Grave, keeping him alive. Sumail jumping forward, still looking to take out Hal, but he's as healthy as ever. Maybe not. The directed damage from EG almost taking him out. In fact, they do now. SCII is going to fall as well. The jump away, Doppelganger managed to finish off. The Lion is overextended himself. Super now needs a target for that unstable concoction. Stuns himself. Couldn't even get it off on the illusion. And Super surrounded, bursted down by PPD. FY was even trying to use that relocate to save, but that's not going to happen. A complete wipe as Vici Gaming. They won the last fight. It seemed like they got enough confidence to be able to go for more, but all they got was the kill and the Enigma, and as they overextend themselves into that Tier 1 tower, lose the whole entire team.
The problem right now for Vici is that by initiating on AUI, he's always going to get his mech off because the Dazzle is just waiting behind him with the Grave. And so it takes Vici a little bit too much to be able to go for him. The commitment is a little bit too much. They've already lost 2 heroes by the time they take down the Enigma, and that doesn't even factor into the fact that Fear is just kind of plinking away at them the entire time, building up that illusion army. And we saw the power of the Phantom Lancer plus the Dazzle there, as they're able to just completely blow up Super. He had about 400 HP left. He goes from 100 to 0 instantly, and EG just completely win a fight right there.
I really like the way that they focus down Hal as, I mean, at this point in time, you're looking at it, Alchemist doesn't really do much damage. His damage already comes out no matter what, right? He's going to be able to get off Unstable Concoction as well as an Acid Spray, and he's a tough target to kill during his ultimate. The rest, I mean, Clockwork's already blown his hook shot and everything else. Then you've got the supports who, yes, you want to kill, but are sitting a lot farther back, so they just focus on the primary damage dealer, the biggest threat in these current fights, which is Hal. They just plink him down with both the Storm Spirit and the Phantom Lancer directing their damage, and sure, you managed to pick up the Enigma, but with the loss of the Razor, they're just able to punish Vici Gaming so heavily, and that easily could have gone like the first fight that we saw, where Vici Gaming smoked up. It felt like that was a fight that EG could have won quite easily too, if they just had the numbers there, essentially. Basically, Vici Gaming brought How, which was the added factor, and EG were only grouped up as 3. It goes to show on even battlefields here, EG come out on top pretty heavily.
Yeah, and they are going for this bottom tier 1. FY and How can almost always come in with the relocate, and Super is the frontliner here. He's got a pretty absurd amount of farm right now. Like, he's got a mech and the Ogre Club. I'd imagine that's going to be a BKB, and it doesn't look like Vici Gaming. They're just kind of waiting things out right now, and EG's going to farm out the jungle, just wait for the next creep wave, and Vici Gaming is actually the team that's going to split up the map a little bit, as How will push up this top lane, and he's going for the S and Y right now, and I think that's the right idea. Go for the mid-game items. If you go for the BKB right now, I feel like it's a little bit too all-in by How, and so I think going for the S and Y is the better, like the middle game option. It's a little bit better for that.
Yeah, I can see where you're going with, especially since even if you do pick up the BKB, there's still a lot of physical damage that's coming your way, particularly with the minus armor, but you have the Tussa that's coming in with this Walrus Punch. You also have the 2 other cores, both the Storm Spirit and the Phantom Lancer, who will both put out a decent amount of physical damage, and obviously that is really amped up by the weave that kicks in from PPD.
Yeah, and I was actually going to point out a build, and I just completely forgot about it right now. Oh, it's that SCII is opting to go for the Orchid right now. Because he realizes the type of
okay.
situation that his team is in. He's like,
Yeah.
we have 0 disables that can instantly initiate. Like, our line is so far away from Blink Dagger. Like, Fenrir is not thinking about Blink Dagger in the next 10 minutes.
Right.
And so I guess Ice 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 is the next best option. But I think if Sumail sees this, I would go for the BKB second. Like, I don't think you need to go for the Bloodstone and Snowball. Like, Fear is farming well enough. Like, if Fear wasn't farming as well as he was, then I think that Sumail goes for the Bloodstone first and then the BKB. But I think if you see Ice 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 go for that Orchid, it's going to take him so long, and in this mid lane, he's going to get initiated on.
He tried to bait out that tower. They will be able to blow up Sumail, so it is successful. Super will stun himself. They're looking for more. Fear, who's, he does have his doppelganger ready to go. Jumps at the last second. The hook shot doesn't land. Fear gets farther away. Hal's going to try and chase him down, but it seems like Fear, he's out far enough. He's going to be able to TP out. Fenrir, obviously, not having that Blink Dagger, won't be able to stop it. And it was successful in the fact that they do manage to get a pick off there, but it is still the tower going down to the favor of Evil Geniuses.
Yeah, and I like that Vici Gaming right now, they're not getting a little bit too over-aggressive. What they're waiting for is for EG to overextend and make mistakes.
Right.
Because Vici, yeah, they don't have the best catch potential, but they've got heroes that move really quickly. Like, they've got the Razor, who's got 450 Amusi when he pops the phase. He's got drums as well. You've got an Alchemist with phase boots at the same time. Like, they do have decent gap closing now. And Super's going to pick up the BKB, and I think Vici's going to hit a nice timing where they've got the SNY, they've got the BKB on the Alchemist, and I think they do want to get aggressive, but this bottom lane, Sumail uses all of his mana to go on Fenrir.
Oh, they bring him down with just the Orchid. Sumail does have a little bit of mana left thanks to his wand, enough to get out of reach of Hao's lance there, and will be able to bottle up, so he's good. But at the same time, I want to go back to the BKB here. I'm kind of questioning it solely because at this point, doesn't EG just ignore Super? I mean, his damage isn't really that threatening. We saw from the fight in the middle lane, they going for Hao first. Hao doesn't have a BKB. Like, he has a decent amount of stats thanks to S and Y, but they can still focus him down pretty easily and just kind of leave Super to do whatever he wants to and just try and kite him around. And they do have some pretty good kiting mechanisms. They not only have the save from Dazzle, but you also have things like Tusk and his plethora of abilities to be able to save. I feel like the Alchemist really needs damage in order to make himself a threat, in order to make EG target him and not Hao.
Yeah, I think he just wants to get into the center of the fight, and EG going for the smoke. With that Sigil, it's so easy to go for the Roshan, and Vici might still want to go for this, but they are going to back up. But Hao is the frontliner, and Sumail's just going to jump right in.
Yeah, he's got the Aegis. He's happy to be able to fight this one, especially when he's pulled Hao on top of the cliff to relocate to the side. Super popping his BKB, trying to get out. They're going to go for Fenrir. Universe looking to punch him out, but not good enough. Ice, Ice, Ice. His TP is stopped. There goes that black hole. Ice will end up going down. Super and Fenrir, though, going to try and focus on Universe and will be successful in their endeavor. Hao comes back thanks to that relocate, ready to fight. In fact, PPD is going to be that target. He does still have Shallow Grave. He's going to keep it alive. Sumail, meanwhile, still fighting on that cliff with the Aegis, is going to be able to go for Hao. PPD takes out eventually left-hand side. FY targeted by Fear. Looks like he should be run out as he doesn't really have anything to get away from this one. Fenrir can't stop this. Back over to Hao, who does end up going down to Sumail, still having that Aegis alive, and sure enough, Evil Geniuses, Sumail definitely had the right idea there with the Aegis and being able to target Hao first and force Vici Gaming into that defensive relocate. They could easily win the fight. In fact, they still had that Aegis to fall back on, which is obviously huge on a Storm Spirit.
And as a Storm player right now, I'm just so blown away by what Sumail did. He pretty much was a Magnus skewering people on top of the cliff. He made the Wisp use the relocate in such an unideal position, getting him to get Hao out of the fight. Sumail, meanwhile, just sat on top of the cliff, got Super on top of the cliff right after that, and they were able to bring him down. And just beautiful play by EG. And with that Aegis on Sumail, I think this is going to mean that, yeah, he's going to go for the Bloodstone. Like, when you have this sort of advantage and you're okay to play with one life, you go for the Bloodstone, you opt to go for the Snowball. And this has to be a worry right now for Vici as they lose the Aegis, they lose that 5-man fight, and Sumail just got huge off of that.
Yeah, an added benefit would be perhaps that Tusk, Universe has his Blink Dagger. So even if they do get some sort of control on Sumail, if he jumps first or something like that, Universe has the follow-up to be able to jump in, snowball, and save Sumail's life. And it's very unlikely that you're going to be able to get the stun outside of the snowball before Sumail makes the zip away. Right, like it's just going to have to be totally on Fenrir to be able to land a really good Earth Spike, or perhaps Clockwork with Cogs. That's pretty much your only kind of preemptive abilities to stun Sumail outside of Snowball.
Yeah, and I feel like Ice has been playing this game about as well as he can, but he's running into the issue right now that he just can't really do anything against the Phantom Lancer. Like, there's hundreds of illusions out there.
Yeah.
His battery assault isn't doing any damage. His hook shot isn't really finding anything as a result. And this game just gets more and more rough for a Clockwork. He does manage to pick up the Orchid, and Sumail kind of hits this awkward timing where he goes for the Bloodstone, and in this mid lane, he's going to jump on Super, trying to force the relocate over.
Yeah, or either that or the BKB, just anything. But Ice is here, and his item may come as a surprise to some of the members of Evil Geniuses. Maybe not the fact that he's building Orchid, but the fact that it's already up. Evil Geniuses, AUI, thought he was going to get caught out there, but they do back away from the jungle. They have another 2 minutes for that Aegis. So they may feel comfortable trying to force a fight here. Meanwhile, Vici Gaming are sitting bottom, waiting for anybody to try and go on How, as that is probably the most obvious target of a gank right now.
This smoke gank, it's if you get a kill, great, but the main goal is to go for this tower and just try to get a little bit of gold wherever you can right now, because you want to bring the fight to EG. As weird as that sounds, like, Vici have lost the last 3 fights, but this is kind of their best option to force EG into a situation where they want to get into a 5-man fight.
Boy, but Fear, he's already got the Diffusal level 2 plus the Manta at 24 minutes in. This is an insanely farmed Phantom Lancer, sitting at 521 gold per minute for a game that has hosted a lot of fighting so far. This is Fear doing what Fear does best, being able to be a part of team fights, not go down, and still rack up a good amount of CS.
Yeah, and the smoke is now going to go off for EG as Sumail drops his bottle. PPD is going to be the recipient, and they want to get aggressive in this jungle right now, but it doesn't look like they'll have enough time to find anybody, as Vici realized that EG are trying to get aggressive. I think this ward especially was able to spot the rotations down, and they're just trying to get as far deep into their jungle as possible. And this bottom tower, though, seems like the main goal for EG. It's, again, these smokes aren't meant to really kill anybody. If they do, great.
They found how Sumail's going to be able to jump straight for Ice. The counter Orchid is there, holding Sumail in place. The rest of Evil Geniuses surge forward past that tier 2 tower to make sure that Sumail does stay alive. Of course, Sumail still has that Aegis and willing to burn it too. But in the meantime, he's just forcing pretty much everyone back from Vici Gaming while they easily take the tier 2, as you said.
Yeah, and this bottom tower right now is going to go down, and Sumail forcing everybody back. And the big thing for Vici is that they do reveal that the Clockwork has the Orchid. Like, that had to be a little bit of a surprise for Sumail. When he rolls in, he gets instantly Orchided, and EG are just going to back out after that tier 2. But both of those smokes that you saw there, like, if you're a viewer, you're going to say, oh, those are unsuccessful smokes because we didn't kill anybody. But those are just kind of, if we get somebody, great. If not, at minimum, we're perfectly set up for the tower, and we can force Vici back.
Right. Once you're able to basically set up 5 heroes on the tower, you eliminate any chances of TP in to be able to set up defense. So it forces Vici Gaming to basically make, they have to walk in, essentially, to get to that tower, especially towers like this bottom tier 2, where you're able to get control of this ramp. It's pretty critical.
Yeah, and 8 minutes left for a smoke for Vici, so this one's really critical, and this is not a tower-taking smoke. This is, we want to try to get aggressive, and Fenrir, who doesn't have a Blink Dagger, this is the only way he's going to get initiations off, if he's able to do it from the fog, but they are headed up here right now, and
if they get a really good pick-off, this could be a tier 1 tower, but unfortunately it doesn't seem like that's going to happen unless Ice makes a brilliant play here. Oh, blocked out by the illusions now. Still looking for that opportunity, but he knows. Evil Genius is going to start swarming up to that top lane. Does Vici Gaming still try and take this? You said they should be trying to force fights as much as possible right now, but they've already kind of given up that alarm bell.
I don't know, because they don't have any more smokes, and EG have a lot more map control than them, and giving up on this tier 1, it's kind of a damned if you do, damned if you don't. Because if you go for the tier 1 and you lose that fight, then you probably just throw the game away. But Vici are going to be on the defensive for most of this game now, as they have to wait for at least Super to get a BK, or How to get a BKB, I think, next. But I don't even know how much that's going to affect anything, because they just lack damage, like you said. And I thought that was the best point that you could have brought up, is that the Alchemist going for the BKB, he doesn't do any damage. Like, he pops the BKB, he goes golden, and then he just kind of does 100 damage a hit.
Yeah. And he does have 3k gold sitting on him. Originally, I would have said Maelstrom for a damage item, right? I thought that would have been good. Does he still go Maelstrom, though? At this point, when you're 30 minutes into the game, feels maybe a little bit late. What other item options do you really have?
AC. AC is probably the high ground item that you go for.
Right.
Like your team just needs to get as many team-based items as you can.
Sure.
Like I thought it was going to be the Maelstrom or the Assault Curse, but if you go for the Maelstrom right now, you don't even have enough damage to kill the illusions. Like Fear is just so strong. He's got an ulti orb, a Manta style, and a Diffusal Blade. So you killing all those illusions on your own probably isn't going to happen, but the better thing to do is to be able to have as much team fight as you can, just get as tanky as you can, and hopefully you win one fight and you can go high ground.
I'm just looking at PPD. Like, PPD, as we said, in fact, if you look at just the net worth, how the net worth is divided up by evil geniuses, EG is one of the teams that has the poorest 5 position out there, right? Like the way they split up net worth. Oh, Super is actually going to be potentially caught by Sumail here. Makes the zip in, turns on half-white first. Wants to make sure there's no relocate out. Super actually explodes on himself, does hit Sumail in the process, but he's surrounded by 3 and unlikely. Well, the BKB Walrus Punch stops that one immediately. Meanwhile, the top lane, they do actually get the Phantom Lancers. So, I mean, that was obviously a terrible loss at the bottom lane, but getting Fear is surprising to me. That had to be all on Ice, and I'm presuming his Orchid.
So what ended up happening is that Fenrir was the target. Like Fenrir initiates onto to the Phantom Lancer, dies instantly, but it buys his team enough time to get up there, and that's a pretty decent trade, I guess. Like you lose the Lion, but he instantly respawns, so it probably doesn't matter too much. What matters more is that they take down Fear. That does slow down the high ground push right now for EG, but I don't think they should continue to go for this EG. I think you wait for the Phantom Lancer. Going for a 4v4 fight right now would be pretty disastrous, especially when it's your second highest net worth hero. Like you can wait for Fear right now.
That's right. To complete the point, it's PPD who's going to be able to pick up a Necronomicon soon. He's already got himself... Oh, no. Never mind. He actually just has a casual belt of strength, and then is getting a Force Staff.
Gotta go for that HP.
I was about to say, I was like, holy cow. If he actually thinks he's going to have enough net worth to be able to, like, get the full Necrobook 3, this is an EG that I've never seen before, where PPD actually has tons and tons of farm.
Yeah, they're actually all playing, they're item-wise, they're just building to be core-centric.
Yep.
Like, they're just trying to save Sumail and and Fear if they can, but Ice might be the target right now as Sumail thinking about jumping, but he knows that the entire team is behind him, and he's just going to wait for this bottom lane to push out a little bit more, and AUI is rotating over. He doesn't quite have the BKB yet, and I think if you're EG, you definitely wait for the BKB on AUI, at the very least. Like, there's very little that can go through the BKB. I think it's only the Clockwork Hook, right, that would stop that. And Ice is probably going to use that to gap close, so if you're AUI, you definitely wait for the BKB, because there's only one ability in the game right now that can stop you.
Yeah, you feel so confident, especially with the 2 cores. The natural way you're going to play an Alchemist as well as a Razor is very forward, very in the enemy's face, and that just leaves ample opportunities for a Universe to catch a potential two-man black hole, and just the 2 of them. If he catches anybody else, he'll be happy.
All right, so EG are grouped up. In this bottom lane area, 3 heroes, they just continue to split out the map. I think this is the correct decision by them. Instead of going for the 5-man, they've got so much map control, they can farm out 3 different sides of the map at the same time. And Vici, Fenrir is sitting behind Hao right now, but I don't even know if that matters too much. Like, he's got the BKB, he should be fine. And this bottom lane is being pushed in. They do have the BKB now on AUI, and the Linken's is nearly completed on Sumail. And this is the pub build. This is the, I'm far enough ahead, it doesn't really matter. We've got like 6 different ways to save me. There's 3 Force Staffs on my team. I believe, there's 3. We've got a mech and a grave. I can go for greedy items like this.
Oh my god, Fenrir! Sumail zips halfway across the map up to the top lane to be able to catch him out thanks to this ward right here. Sumail finding a free kill and an added charge to his Bloodstone.
Yeah, and this has to be a nightmare right now for Fenrir because he's playing a Lion, and typically with the Lion, there's one of 2 things that happens. Either A, you're getting initiated on because you don't have a Blink Dagger and you just don't have the net worth, or B, you're the one initiating on the Storm, and we're seeing which one it is this game is. Sumail picks up the Linken's now.
Yeah, it seems like Fenrir just like, even if this goes another 20, 30 minutes, doesn't feel like Fenrir is going to have the chance to get a Blink Dagger. Unless he picks up somehow the last hit on a critical kill. But as you said, he's oftentimes the first target of Sumail.
The thing is, the Lion gives you so much, on Vici Gaming, right? Like the finger still does an insane amount of damage. It's, almost 500 instantly. He's got the Hex and the stun. So he's a high-profile target that can't survive. Like that's how you should typically look at it when you want to go for targets in fights. It's who's the easiest to kill / does the most for their team.
Right.
And so if you weigh that, it's gonna be Fenrir every time. Unfortunately for him.
And this is going to be another Roshan going the way of Evil Geniuses. The Assault Cuirass finished up for the Alchemist, but doesn't change much. Sumail has himself an Aegis. We're going to have a Scotty picked up soon for our Phantom Lancer. AEY already has his BKB plus another 1,000 gold, so he can start working towards whatever he wants. Blink Dagger may be the usual item that you go for, but at this point, you've got so much team fight and so much potential high ground push from Evil Geniuses, he may just opt for something a little bit more team fight.
Yeah, Sumail, I'd get a Shiva's. It's a good item. You just need as much AoE as you can right now against Vici's lineup, and he's going to be the front liner for them. As they're just going to chip away at this mid tower. I think the correct move from EG is probably to just keep going. Like they've got the Aegis. It looks like they do want to kind of push back top, save this tier 1. Sumail's not even afraid. Like he's solo up here.
There goes that snowball. Universe. He's managed to just catch Super. This is all he wants. He just wants to stall up Super so he doesn't have the opportunity to TP away, but unfortunately that Alchemist Unstable Concoction is enough of a duration stun for him to be able to TP ahead of the Walrus Punch.
Yeah, and that was a rough situation right now for Universe to be in, because if you use the Walrus Punch, then Super knows that he can TP out.
Yeah.
Like he has to just tank the stun and hope for the best, and hope the timing works out in his favor, but good play by Super to be able to get out of there. The only downside, actually there's no downside there because he doesn't even use the BKB. Like that was the best possible scenario there for Super, and so you still got an 8-second BKB on the Alchemist. Your Razor's got a decent amount of farm. He's gonna pick up Shiva's himself, and he's really close to it. And he's got a 10-second BKB, so it's kind of looking a little bit grim for Vici Gaming as the game goes on, but all hope is not lost yet.
Evil Geniuses, as you say that, just easily backdoor tier 2 tower. No problem. Who cares about protection? Now with the creeps joining them, they can actually go for an uphill push. And Vici Gaming are just basically going to be scrambling for some kind of initiation. But as I say that, Sumail's actually going to be the one jumping in again. There goes Fenrir. Perhaps FY managed to save him. Glimmer Cape saves the day. Ice continued target as they're practically diving in the fountain to get these squishy supports. Hex push back. Sumail loses a bit of mana. He's still got that Aegis. Meanwhile, AEY may be forced into a black hole here as Hal's looking to be able to finish him off, chase him down with that BKB, but it's still not enough. BKB runs out, and here comes all the magic damage. Hal gets away with the relocate to the side. Hal's going to be able to get some heal out of FY, but Fenrir, he's still going to go down. He came back for more. Sumail gladly takes seconds. As Sumail drop it a bit lower, does have that Aegis, but another Shell Grave comes into play. Hal, well, he's still kept alive, trying to take away some of the damage of Fear, but the rest of Evil Geniuses back themselves away, not losing anybody for that one, and brought a tier 3 tower down to about half HP, and Vici Gaming forced into a couple of deaths there.
That might have been the best possible fight that I've seen Vici do in such a long time. Like, they fought that nearly perfectly. It's just the net worth difference right now that's hurting them. Like, they were moving their supports back, they were glimmer caping each other. Like, the relocate save comes on to How. That was about as well as you're gonna fight that, and still, it's only to hold the line right now.
Jump in, FY, first target. Universe trying to stall him up as best as possible. Does get another Glimmer Cape and will survive for the time being. Nice! Earth Spike is actually going to be able to bring down Sumail finally, but again, it's still the Aegis. How? No armor whatsoever. Fear's going to be able to run him down with another lance. Couple more right clicks. Sumail, he'll take it with the ball lightning, and now truly dive in the fountain as Evil Geniuses back themselves up. Okay, time to take a break. Sumail jumps away. They still haven't claimed that tier 3 tower, and the only reason is because EG felt so confident in those fights they could dive fountains willy-nilly.
Yeah, at the same time, they forced 2 buybacks on the side of Vici Gaming, and I mean, Vici are fighting this really well. Like, I can't say that enough, because the net worth disadvantage, if we just take a look at the graph, I'd imagine it's something a little bit insurmountable. It's 20k right now, and they're still making the fight somewhat okay, and I have no idea how they're doing that right now. They're doing the best with what they're given, but there's just not enough farm, and Sumail does opt to go for the Shivas. I don't think you have to go for the Hex at any point in this game anymore. Like, you can maybe go for it as your last item and then get Travels. That'd probably be my item progression. But the Shivas is kind of, like, he's doing the build right now to snowball as hard as possible. And EG with a
Speaking of snowballs.
Yeah?
Speaking of snowballs, I got to ask you about this one. Is this actually a viable pickup on Tusk as the Aghanim Scepter? There's been a lot of hem and haw about that item. Is it actually viable, or at this point in time, like, it doesn't really matter what Universe gets, especially when you're so far ahead, the repositioning of Kick can actually be quite valuable.
No.
But in a normal Tusk game, do you think that Ags is any good?
I think that the Aghanim Scepter is just too underwhelming.
Yeah.
Like, it doesn't slow, it doesn't stun, like, it doesn't
No,
do
it slows.
damage.
It has a 40% slow.
Oh, my bad. It has a 40. It
But
doesn't
no stun, no damage.
It doesn't do damage. It's actually just a slight knockback. It's not even that much of a knockback.
Yeah.
It's a very small knockback with a 40% slow in the late game. And you're paying 4,200 gold for that.
It's Blink Dagger, a failed Blink Dagger range, essentially. I believe it's 900.
Yeah, it's
It's
like
just not enough.
It's the Earth Spirit Stone Remnant kickback, but 100 times worse.
Yeah.
I think it's the item that you pick, though, when you don't really know what to build. You're far enough ahead. Going a
Yeah.
damage item for Universe doesn't really make sense anymore. Like, I feel like there's no
Sure.
real point for him because he doesn't really do too much DPS. You might as well just build as much utility as you possibly can at this point.
Yeah.
But I don't think it's going to be the make or break item for them.
Super. Oh, Jesus, look at those illusions. They have to throw out the Earth Spike. He's already popped the BKB, which means that relocate was completely futile. And that's going to be another ultimate on cooldown here, and perhaps our Wisp going down. We'll see what Evil Geniuses are able to plan out here as they're looking to just pop FY right away. They are very successful. EG now looking to be able to finally end this game with a one-hero advantage and obviously a gigantic net worth. Pushing uphill once again, a different tier 3 tower, a different day, I suppose. EG looking to just slowly but surely chip this one down, and with a Phantom Lancer, they've got ample opportunities. The impetus is completely on Vici Gaming to try and get a fight here.
Yeah, and they have to... I think giving up one Rax is okay, but you can't lose your entire team as...
Orchid it up, Super. He doesn't have that BKB. He's going to stun himself. Excellently done by Sumail. Super. Food for fodders. He ends up going down, and supports in the back. It's just cleaned up. 1, 2, 3. Hal pops a BKB, but Black Hole says you're not going anywhere. Side initiation. Ice actually makes the hook shot instant TP to save his ally. Vici Gaming again doing everything they can to be able to stop this, but it's just not enough. The net worth advantage for EG is too great, and Evil Geniuses haven't lost a hero, haven't even felt a damp on any of them. They're now going to be able to go for that second set of racks, and sure enough, there it is. GG called from Vici Gaming. Evil Geniuses will move on to claim what hopes to be that first place slot, but they have one more game before that's over.
Yeah, and the Storm, I mean, Sumail, I thought, just did a really good job mid. Their laning phase went a lot better than expected, and I mean, what a game by EG. I think everybody else was against me here. I said EG would win.
Say anything, just to make that point. But yeah, actually, when we were looking at the last pick, The Alchemist, I believe Honey was a big fan of it and liked it. Why do you think it didn't work out? Did it have something to do with him being a mid, or what do you think was the main issue for him not to get anything done there?
Yeah, I do think the situation that he had pretty much a one-on-one where Alchemist is facing a Storm in middle, where especially it's a Sumail Storm, it's probably his favorite hero, that he could play middle, and usually a team ends up in trying to shut him down, especially trying to shut that Storm pick down, and then you give him a free lane. This is like a birthday present that he would get there. Facing an Alchemist, he had free farm on that lane, and I felt like that was the biggest struggle in this game, that I feel like if you're in a position where you usually would try to shut down, especially Sumail Storm, you end up giving him a free lane, and that seemed to be very crucial for them.
And Sumail just played it perfectly as well, right from the get-go, especially after he hit level 2 and onwards, when he just started punishing Super whenever he would even get close to a creep wave. The only way he had to get creeps was hoping that the Acid Cloud or Acid Spray would actually, last the creep, because other than that, it was just Sumail sitting on his ledge. So until the Wisp came in, there was really nothing that Super could do. And then, you opt in for a Mechanism BKB build. That means that you're coming online way, way too late. And by that time, the Phantom Lance is just,
Out of control.
Alchemist is no match for a Phantom Lancer with those kinds of items. If Alchemist had been played in a carry position where he could then itemize in the same pace that the Phantom Lancer did, or even faster, then he'd be able to actually withstand the Phantom Lancer late game just by the sheer power of Wisp being able to, keep him alive and give him attack speed and everything. But that's not how they chose to play it out, and, EG played that fine.
Yeah.
Great even.
How nice of you, Jacob. They played it fine. Now, you guys, you just casted the game. You obviously watched the game then as well. What were your general thoughts? Why do you think it went wrong for VG so badly, apart from that Alchemist?
I mean, I really felt the laning phase. I felt it from the start. I really didn't like the fact that they were putting Alchemist. I mean, you said very strongly that Storm Spirit's going to be able to beat out an Alchemist quite easily 1 versus 1, right? And again, like, it's a Samael. Storm Spirits usually look to shut that down. Instead, they give it a free farm. And I felt like it just didn't play into the advantage of the hero, the Alchemist, building up such a high net worth with Grievel's Greed. I mean, he can't do that when he's being so heavily pushed out by his Storm Spirit. So I personally would have preferred any more defensive setup that would have allowed the Alchemist to be, have that 5K, 7K net worth lead over anybody who's in second place because he's free farming with Grievel's Greed.
Yeah, I think I completely agree with you there. At the laning phase, I think the idea was that the Razor goes to the top lane. They try to contest the Phantom Lancer as much as possible so that the Enigma can't just go to the woods. Like, you want the Enigma to rotate in then, and hopefully at that point you've built up enough of an advantage in that top lane where you can switch out the lanes at that point and then put the Clockwork in a position where he can one-on-one against the Phantom Lancer, because the Phantom Lancer has no farm at that point, and then you've got a Razor one-on-one against a Tusk, and then from there it becomes too hard for EG to rotate their lanes around. But it just came down to the fact that they weren't able to do anything in that top lane. Like, they couldn't kill. He still got heavily out-farmed by the Phantom Lancer. Like, the Razor was like 6th or 7th in net worth. The Enigma was 2nd in net worth pretty firmly the entire time. The Storm Spirit was up there as well, and you don't ever want to trade a Storm Spirit farm 1 for 1. Like, that's the worst possible position to put yourself in. And so the laning phase just went way too good for EG.
Do you feel like there was any point of time? I mean, yeah, VG took like that one fight right in their base where you said, like, VG, they executed it perfectly. Like, that was a great fight, but they were so far behind already. Was there anything they could have done to even get back into the game, or would it only have been coming down to EG heavily misplaying?
If VG Gaming played it perfectly. At a certain point, they were really playing team fights with pretty much every single bit of skill that we've seen from VG Gaming in the past. There was just absolutely tons of really good saves, really good play by FY. You had even like small things like ice. I mean, how often are you in that situation, but you have to hook shot near your tier 4 tower and immediately TP back to the fountain, which is only like 1,000 range away. Like, he had to make that. It was the only play he could actually do to stop the black hole and get out himself. But you're at such a disadvantage at that point in time. Like, it doesn't matter how many good plays you make individually, and working together as a team in the team fight when I mean, it's an unstoppable force. Evil Geniuses had just too much of an advantage.
Yeah, I think Unstoppable Force describes it really well. There was like a 20,000 gold lead.
Yes.
I think Fear at that point in time probably could have, spared his wrist, just sat back, auto-attacked into the base and just seen what happened, YOLO, let's just trust the item lead, and they still would have won that game. Mm-hmm. That's how far ahead they were. So even if VG Gaming plays the fight to perfection twice in a row, considering how far behind they were, it wouldn't have mattered anything. It at best delayed the inevitable.
I guess also one thing to point out is the rotation that you had in start. You had a Tusk facing a Clock in a 1-on-1 scenario, whereas the first hero that was ganking towards mid lane was the Tusk Snowball onto the mid lane where they killed the Alchemist. And usually would expect, I think it's easier to get a level 6 Clockwork that finds the rotation than a Tusk Snowball, at least from my point of view. So I would like to point out that Universe did play that Tusk very well.
That's a good point.
Except for the last itemization.
Everyone hates the Ags here.
That's no question.
I just think that it doesn't do enough for cost, but I think at that point it doesn't matter. For me personally, these teams are really evenly matched. In a best of 3, maybe we'd get a really close series, but in a best of 1, I think the draft determines so much of it. Like, if you just have the better draft there, then you snowball to a win. I don't want to use that as a pun, because I kept saying the word snowball when they have a Tuskar, but you're going to snowball to the win very easily, and you have 2 mobile cores. You're not able to win the laning phase. From there on out, it's just you just kind of play it out.
Well, but EG took this one over those guys, and that means they are now playing for the 3rd place decider. We're basically back to the start, as they will be meeting IG in that very game, as they already played against them right at the beginning in the upper bracket. As you can see, Invictus Gaming came out on top in that game, but let's see if they can repeat it. So as you can see here in the grid, we already played most of the games. We only have 2 left. We have the grand final here in the upper bracket, which is going to be Team Secret going up against the guys from Virtus Pro to determine who is the seed number 1 and the seed number 2. And Evil Geniuses and Invictus Gamers, as I said before, will be playing it out for the third seed decider. And that's going to happen after a quick break, so don't go anywhere, and we should be back with the next game.